Stop me if you heard this one before. A major city that is the largest in its respective state currently has a mayoral race going on. On one side of the mayoral race, you have a long-serving Democratic politician that has fallen out of favor with the woke media and the left-wing activists, running up against a Muslim Democratic Socialist who is trying to push the issue of affordability. Now, of course, if this sounds like Zohran Mamdani for the mayor's race of the city of New York, that makes sense. Obviously, this parallel is very noticeable, but in reality, what we're talking about today is Omar Fateh, who is running against Jacob Frey in the city of Minneapolis on a DSA agenda about, of course, rent stabilization and rent control due to the fact that there is a horrible affordability crisis happening in the city of Minneapolis. However, while you can look at the betting odds for the Andrew Cuomo versus Mamdani New York mayoral's race and see that Mamdani is the clear and overwhelming favorite, when you shift over to the city of Minneapolis, what you ultimately end up finding out is that Omar Fateh, running on the same exact platform, trying to use that Muslim energy with, by the way, an even more Islamic population. There's a reason why Minneapolis is called oftentimes Little Mogadishu. In fact, he is of Somali origin, which the state of Minnesota has changed their own state flag to look more like the Somali flag. And yet, when you see the odds for yourself, what you ultimately end up realizing is that the bettors are saying that Jacob Frey has a 75 to 80% chance of winning this mayoralship for a third term. And I think it's important for us to actually address why that is, because while a lot of people are running at Zohran Mamdani in the city of New York on the issue of Israel, of all things, a foreign government, when we're talking about a domestic political position, or they're going after him for being Muslim, which a lot of people are doing so, Jacob Frey has a completely different tactic. He's going after Omar Fateh on facts, on his affordability agenda, and what he's actually demonstrating is that if you have good governing policies in this area, you can ward off these radical socialist challengers. And this is what we're going to talk about today. But before we do, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money, okay?
For the last 8 years, we've listened to a mayor answer questions around affordable housing with only one answer: build more and more and more. And in those same 8 years, we've only seen your rents and property taxes go up and up and up. And I agree, we do need to build more. But the truth is, to address the housing needs in Minneapolis, we need to do more than just build. We also need to stabilize rents, prevent rental evictions, treat homelessness as a public health emergency, and create pathways to homeownership. And when elected, I'm committed to using every tool in the toolbox to address the problem, because we deserve a mayor that's committed to solutions, not just sound bites.
So one of the things that you really need to understand about Omar Fateh is that he's actually stupid. He's actually not smart at all. He's actually an absolute idiot in every possible way. And no, I'm not saying that because he's Somali and he has an eerie resemblance to, of course, the Somali pirate from the Captain Phillips movie, because that guy actually was a man with a plan, and in reality, taking a ship hostage in order to extort money from people in order to get the release of the ship is a logical plan, unlike what Omar Fateh has. Now, you just saw right there in the video that he is running hard on the affordability agenda. He's saying Jacob Frey has promised to get the cost of housing down in the city of Minneapolis, but in reality, his strategy of just build doesn't work. What we need to do is shift to rent control and rent stabilization, because that will be the solution to the affordability crisis. And of course, what he cites as his evidence is the fact that rent is going up dramatically each and every year in the city of Minneapolis. So if building more supply actually ended up addressing the housing crisis, we would see those results in said price of rent and not have a housing crisis. And the thing is, this sounds logical, this sounds intuitive. A lot of different progressives are trying to cheer on Omar Fateh, but he happens to be 100% dead ass wrong on this issue, because guess what? Prices of rent are falling in the city of Minneapolis, and one need only look at these two charts to understand why. So what you have right here on the left side of this chart is the number of housing units built in comparable Midwestern cities, with Minneapolis at the top, followed by Omaha, followed by Columbus, Kansas City, Cincinnati, and Indianapolis. And what you can see is that these cities were pretty consistent in their building up until about 2020, 2021, when Minneapolis engaged in their zoning reform, thus making it significantly easier to build more apartments, build more triplexes, and of course, build more units without going through an extensive permitting process. Now, according to the Muslim Democratic Socialist candidate Omar Fateh, rents have still risen in the city of Minneapolis, and the only solution, the only thing that needs to be implemented in response to this is, of course, rent control / rent stabilization in order to actually bring prices down. Again, he said it for himself. But the thing is, the other half of this chart is quite telling because it gives you the rent increases versus decreases as compared to 2017 levels. And what you find out is that Minneapolis, the city that built the most, has by far the fastest reducing rent. And what's crazy about this particular chart is what it actually says is that in terms of real dollars, inflation adjusted dollars, rent has actually fallen in the city of Minneapolis since 2017 by 20%. 20% reduction in rent compared to 2017. Now, of course, they did lose population during COVID. The Black Lives Matter riots obviously drove people away. So obviously you see an impact of that. However, they are gaining back some population. And while that is currently happening, you could see that, of course, rents are still reducing. Minneapolis is becoming more and more affordable because they're allowing more and more building. And of course, this is directly contrary to what Omar Fateh is trying to tell people, which of course is that prices are out of control, rents are sky high, and the reason for this is because, oh my god, the evil developers, they're building so much, but they're keeping prices up, even though, again, that is not how supply and demand works. Again, these people are essentially economic flat earthers. These people are absolute idiots. If they knew anything about the economy, they would not be socialists. So we're watching an absolute idiot get all the support from the left-wing base. They're trying to juice this guy up, a la Zohran Mamdani, when in reality, it couldn't be more clear that on the issue of housing, Jacob Frey is the guy who should be the candidate and who should win the election for the city of Minneapolis. If this is your number one issue, let's be real, this guy has presided over a reduction in rents through policy that, by the way, is far less costly than rent control, rent stabilization, or this obsession with building public housing everywhere at the taxpayer expense. You basically paid nothing, you allowed developers to develop, and guess what? Your citizens reap the benefits of that development. And by the way, I say this as somebody who is no fan of Jacob Frey in other regards. I mean, he is essentially an off-brand, more bitch-made version of Justin Trudeau, and of course, this is the same guy who is crying at the golden casket at George Floyd's funeral, and of course was humiliated multiple different times during the Black Lives Matter riots, and he's pathetic in every possible way except on this issue. Essentially, you have off-brand Trudeau versus the off-brand Somali pirate in this election, but in reality, people are responding to the reduction in rents by realizing that Omar Fateh is in fact a charlatan. He has nothing to offer. And by the way, this should have been a lesson for Andrew Cuomo and Curtis Sliwa, who did not run right at Zohran Mamdani's affordability agenda, because make no mistake about it, Omar Fateh and Zohran Mamdani are the same person with the same policies. Now, of course, there's an additional benefit that is happening in the city of Minneapolis, and that, of course, is the twin city on the other side of this, St. Paul, that did, in fact, institute a rent control program, capping rent increases at 3% a year, which ultimately ended up leading to a 60+% reduction in building, while Minneapolis ended up having a 61% building boom. And of course, this was highlighted by John Stossel when confronting a Democratic Socialist member of the Minneapolis City Council, and this woman had absolutely no answer for the disaster that her policy that she was pushing actually ended up having in the city of St. Paul.
Builders still build in Minneapolis. Building permits were up 65% last winter. But in St. Paul, they're down 60% because of rent control. You're not going to get more apartments by pushing this.
This pause is one of those rare interview moments where silence reveals so much.
Now look, I've done a whole video on the comparison between Minneapolis and St. Paul, but in science, what we call this is a twin city. You have two cities right next to one another. Again, similar populations, similar demographics, and at the same time, one of them cleared up their zoning code, the other one instituted the strictest rent control in the entire country. But Omar Fateh, the absolute idiot, the absolute dumbass that he is, looks at this twin study, sees absolutely amazing results in Minneapolis, terrible results in St. Paul. Basically, the patient died over there, and he's like, you know what? I'm going to go out on a limb, I'm going to say something crazy, and I'm going to say that I want the poison that killed the other patient rather than the cure that has been instituted in the city of Minneapolis. If there was any more proof that Kirk Wilcox, who, by the way, I will be on with him on Stephen Michael Davis's stream tomorrow, November 1st at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to do a live stream, check that out, link to Stephen's channel in the description, says is true, and that is that the argument of socialism versus capitalism is not an economics argument. It is a moral argument. Even though we have clear and obvious economic proof that rent control and rent stabilization does not work, it's absolutely disastrous. It backfires in every possible way. We have a twin study, again, that only dates back a couple of years ago to compare and contrast that. These socialists, these economic flat earthers, are still trying to moralize at you about the need for rent control, even though it is proven to be an absolute disaster. And it's really unfortunate that Governor Andrew Cuomo and Curtis Sliwa did not run at Mamdani in this kind of way, because we're essentially going to elect a guy who is a left-wing NIMBY. I've showed you his website multiple times where he said he's going to block private developments that don't meet his standards, aka more left-wing regulations that's going to make it more difficult to build housing in the city of New York. And despite what you see on social media about the absolute lie that New York City has embraced for the last decade, radical YIMBYism, in reality, in actuality, New York City is among the bottom of cities in terms of building housing units in the entire country, and obviously that is what is leading to such dramatic increases in rent. And of course, Zohran Mamdani has said that he doesn't want to redevelop places like Long Island City in order to make more affordable housing right on the waterfront. What he wants to do is make an even bigger park by connecting two parks, because again, this guy is of the ilk that brought you open space laws in the city of San Francisco, and of course he's pushing for more subsidized housing, more rent stabilized housing, which is proven time and time again to do the exact opposite of lowering costs. So yeah, as weak as Jacob Frey actually is, as bitch-made as this man has proven to be on a whole host of issues, he's winning on the issue of affordability, because guess what? He's doing something on the issue of affordability. And this, of course, should be a lesson to every candidate, not just Democratic candidates, of the direction that you should go in. But you know what? Those are just my thoughts. I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. As per usual, if you like this video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on my social medias, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about the really dumb Muslim candidate and why he's losing in the city of Minneapolis. Till next time.